Yeah, hi there. This is Bernhard Koepp at CJ Lawrence. It is May 24th. As we get ready to go into the Memorial Day weekend, I just wanted to review the markets here at the end of May. There's this old adage in Wall Street where you say, sell in May and go away. So I wanted to review some of the data, if that is really something you should be doing. So it's interesting if you look at the data over the last 10 years, you had only 3 periods between end of May and the end of the year where you had negative returns. And those 3 years on average were negative 4.8. The positive years, the other 7 years where you had positive returns from end of May to end of December, you had on average a return of 14.2%. So quite a difference. So it's interesting that if you look at a 10-year period with everything we've gone through a bear market, we've gone through a pandemic, the market tends to skew positive over longer periods of time. So we have to be a bit careful when we look at these kind of sayings like go away, sell in May and go away. So let's just review 3 reasons why we continue to want to really stay long this market. And these are really the drivers of the market and the drivers of the economy. So number one, this is a productivity-led economy. And this is really important. Look, I've been doing this for 30 years now. I've seen a lot of markets, and the most powerful markets that we tend to see are when we have productivity growth rising in the US economy. And if we go back to the 1990s, that was a time, and if you look at the 93, 94 period, we were just coming out of the savings and loans crisis. And at that time, we had some 1,400 banks, savings and loans banks, and thrifts going bust. It was not a very optimistic time, but we had something happening in the economy, which was technology. We were starting to build the internet. And it was really interesting that 94, 95 period when it was clear that we were going to get productivity tools that were technology driven, that this would set up a very powerful economy and market. So going through that productivity growth period from 95 through really 2000, it set up a pretty remarkable market. So we think we're in a similar period this time. And if you look at where the last reading of productivity was about 2.9%, so we're getting about 2.9% productivity growth out of the economy. If we add 1% of population growth, that gives us about 3.9% of GDP growth that is free of inflation. And we've had a lot of debates, and there's a lot of strategists and economists debating where we are in the inflation cycle. We've come from a 9.1 reading at the high to about 3.4% at the moment, but it's really important. We are now seeing productivity growth going up. And why is that important? It's for 2 reasons. One, it drives earnings. I mean, if we see the margins in our companies, they're becoming more productive, they're becoming more efficient. It's actually interesting, we're seeing profit margins in the S&P 500 actually stabilize and in some cases rise. That's really important. But it's also the fact that it gives the Fed, and that is Jay Powell, the backing to say even if we don't hit the 2% inflation target that they always talk about, they can lower rates without overheating the economy. So let's just review that. If we have 2.9% productivity growth plus 1% of population growth, it gives us about the leeway of having 3.9% of GDP growth that is not inflationary. So if we think about where we are in terms of GDP growth, we're at around 3%. And if that is well within the bounds of non-inflationary type of growth. So if we look ahead, is Jay Powell and the Fed going to lower rates going forward? We think they will. I mean, we have an election coming up, which may complicate the timing of this, and we have more data coming out. And if we pull back a little bit and look at things like core inflation, they are actually trending down. So we think we will get at least one rate cut this year, which sets up a pretty decent market. So I mentioned earnings growth. So my partner, Terry Gardner, put out a very interesting YouTube, the last one that we put out at CJ Lawrence, which was to highlight that we have now a forecast for 3 consecutive years of double-digit earnings growth in the S&P 500. And this is looking at 2024, 25, 26 forecasts. Each of these are actually showing double-digit earnings growth for the S&P 500. So that data may be wrong. These are projections, forecasts. But if you look in history, this has only happened 5 times since 1950. And it's really a remarkable kind of configuration if we can get 3 years of earnings growth consecutively that are double digit. It's very rare. So if we can get that going forward, we are really quite bullish about where equities can go. I mean, we got some very important earnings news out of companies like NVIDIA, and these are these powerful product cycles that are driving productivity, which is generative AI. But we're also seeing it out of companies that are in the healthcare sector. It's not just technology, it's also healthcare. And there is a very powerful product cycle in the so-called GLP-1 drug category. These are the weight loss drugs that companies like Eli Lilly and Novo Nordisk have developed. We're just at the beginning of that. I mean, they're just building out production to be able to deliver the product, and we will be going to injectables to pills at some point. There's a bit of a tug of war between the insurance companies and people using these drugs, but it's setting up a very powerful product cycle also on the healthcare side. So that all of these things make us quite bullish going into the rest of the year. So going into the Memorial Day weekend, we are quite positive on the markets. So we would not sell in May and go away. So hopefully that will give you some good news going into the Memorial Day weekend. We wish you a great holiday, and we'll see you at the next video. Bye-bye.